me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Let's go. I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, gotta feel the vengeance. In my thoughts.
Welcome back, everybody. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you like this video. Comment down below. Tell me what other options that we have at players, whatever you want to discuss about football, what you want me to make a video about, whatever you would like to discuss with me. Comment down below. It would be awesome to have a conversation with you. But we're going to go into, it's day 3-ish. It's more like day 5. And so far, we're going to go over all the free agent signings that we've had for the Miami Dolphins, and we're going to discuss how they affect the team and honestly how they make us better. Because I'm going to be real with you, woke up this morning, I was a little nervous. We weren't targeting an offensive lineman, and it looks like we're targeting George Fant and maybe a couple other right tackles. That's all I wanted. That was the last thing that I wanted. So I wanted to discuss everything that was happening, because we, as a fan, I think a lot of fan bases, what they want you to do is go for the huge name and spend all your money on one player and think that that makes the team great. And what I think we all need to consider when we're looking at what the Dolphins just did in free agency, they made a big splash. They got the big guy, and on top of that, they filled out the entire roster. All of the weak spots that we had, they put players there. So last year, linebackers, the strong safety position, the offensive linemen, and the corner were all of our weak areas. Those are all the weak areas that we had on this team. The defensive line was good. The outside linebackers were good. But we had problems at corner. We had problems at safety and the secondary. We had problems at offensive line. And we had problems at the inside linebacker. They have gotten players for every single one of those positions in free agency, and instead of overpaying for anyone, because Jalen Ramsey has restructured his contract, and I know people are trying to say that he had a down year. We'll get into that, but you basically paid the right amount for a Jalen Ramsey, got him for like pennies on the dollar, and you got your star, and then you filled out the entire roster with all quality players that can make an immediate impact coming into the season. So, and honestly, some of these players can make an extreme impact. Like, we're going to go over this, but yes, the free agency that we just have, once we sign our right tackle, however many that we decide to sign, has been a huge success, and it's been a very good calculated free agency. So we're going to go over number one. We're going to talk obviously about Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey was our big splash, and a lot of people want to say that he had a down year last year. Okay, when you are the only defensive player on that team besides like 2 others that can contribute, and basically the only person in the secondary that's any good, and you essentially have to stop everyone from passing the ball, it's going to be tough for you. And on top of that, you have a team that isn't really going anywhere, and basically 6 games into the season, they were calling it a wrap. It's going to be hard for you to want to give maximum effort, which I'm not discounting anything. Maybe he had a down year, but also when you look at him statistically, he had statistically his best year ever. He had 88 tackles. He had 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 2 sacks. He's had 4 interceptions another year in his year, but that's the most that he's had in his career. So he had the same amount that he usually has. He had 3 forced fumbles, which is more than he's ever had. He had 2 sacks, and he had the most tackles he's ever had. I mean, I get maybe sometimes you look at him, and sure, some of the receivers caught balls in him, but okay, receivers are training and preparing and becoming the best that they can be so that they can do that. But it doesn't mean necessarily that he had a horrible year. The guy still covered everybody's number one, and had a bunch of turnovers. You want to talk about like Xavier Howard being incredible. I mean, to be honest, he caused more turnovers and things like that than Xavier Howard did ever. Like, Xavier Howard had more interceptions a couple of years, but Jalen Ramsey has had multiple interceptions every single year. And this year, he had forced fumbles and sacks, and he almost tackled as many times as a linebacker would, like as a safety would. And he's a corner. I mean, Jalen Ramsey's not even just a corner. The thing that you want to see with this Rams team is that Jalen Ramsey didn't just play corner. He played everything. He was basically their secondary, and they utilized him all over the field. And what's unfortunate is that, he had to cover everybody's best everything. And sometimes, you're going to not be able to cover every single route, every single play. And, sometimes it happens. Every corner has had bad games. But Jalen Ramsey, for the most part, showcased last year that he's still a stud at defensive back, not corner, not safety, but everything. And he is so versatile. And what we are getting is now a guy that also, I know people don't want to accept this, but it is a thing. Your team's not going anywhere last year. Now he's on a team that can go to the Super Bowl. He is going to look like a different player this year. He's going to look revitalized and rejuiced because he's that guy that just brings that dog. And that's what he's going to bring to us. And it was just such a solid signing because we also only gave up a third that we traded a receiver for. And Hunter Long, who never even hit the field. It's just an unbelievable signing. The next player, which I think is going to be the most underrated player in free agency, is going to be David Long. He is the inside linebacker that we signed. I know everybody was telling me that, or seeing in my videos that I wanted Devin Bush, but I'm telling you right now, David Long is going to be one of the most underrated signings in this free agency class. He was for the Tennessee Titans. He's 26, so he's a young linebacker that has showed all-pro potential at Tennessee. He can tackle. He is versatile. He can play pass coverage. He can intercept the ball. He's had 2 interceptions every single year for the past 2 years. The guy is just, he's one of those that showed a huge upside, just had a couple of soft tissue injuries, not significant, that kept him out of games. But what you are getting is you are getting a guy that his ceiling is just as high as Jalen Ramsey. We're getting a linebacker that is 26. So one, you can build with him and we can have a linebacker for the next 6-7 years. And also you are getting a guy that has the potential to be an all-pro this year under Vic Fangio. What we are trying to do with this team is they are trying to use the coaching staff to maximize potential on this team. So we are not going to overspend for names that we think are not to the fullest potential. And I think that's what we did before for the Miami Dolphins, is we would just spend everything on one guy and expect that person to make up for bad coaching and a bad team. And now what we are doing is, yes, we made the splash with Jalen Ramsey, but we are also filling out the rest of the roster with very, very solid, high potential players. And David Long is one of those where he can really man the inside. It looks like we're not moving Jerome Baker, so it'll be him and Jerome Baker. But under the Vic Fangio system, David Long can maximize his potential. And he could possibly be, I'm calling it this year, I think David Long is going to be a all-pro. I'm calling it right now. I think under this system, and with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard on the outside, Javon Holland at the top, you're going to have David Long manning the middle with the pass rush that we have. I think it's just going to maximize the amount of potential because, the Tennessee Titans never really had a pass rush like we have, and they also did not have corners like we have right now. So, the tandem that we have back there, it is going to allow David Long to eat up the middle. And it is going to be incredible to watch this guy work. And I think he's going to be an all-pro. I'm calling it right now. I know he's going to be one of the best players on this defense coming into this year. The next player is going to be DeSean Elliott, and he is the safety that we got from the Lions, and another guy that I think is an extremely excellent signing. He had 94 tackles, he had 1 interception, and the guy is a tackling machine. He is a sure tackler, and if you don't believe that, watch the highlight of when he stands up Derrick Henry by himself, which is, first off, one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen, because most of the time it takes a couple people to bring Derrick Henry down. And usually middle linebacker is the only one that can just tackle him. He's a safety that came up and not just stood him up, but thumped him. The guy is another player that we signed for not that much money, and he's also young, but he can turn out to be an all-pro player. Under the Vic Fangio safety system, Vic Fangio always maximizes his safety talent. Javon Holland, we already know, is going to be very good back there. DeSean Elliott is honestly almost the same thing as a Javon Holland. The guy is a pretty solid safety, and you could tell he had a couple of things happen in the beginning of the Detroit Lions season. But once they started going, especially when he was in the secondary, their secondary and their defense started really stepping up towards the end of the season. And there's a really big factor due to him. He is a thumper. He's a sure tackler. He is a guy that once he gets his hands on you, you're not going anywhere. And he will hit you as hard as he can. So he's going to bring that motor and that stick that you can bring to a defense. And we're getting him for very cheap. And like I said, he's one of those, another guy that you don't pay that much money for, that has the high-end potential, that the coaches can mold him into the best player that he can be. He can have a really high potential on this team. I love this signing, and what it looks like is right now we're not going to overspend for anybody. We are going to get players with a high potential and try and maximize that potential with coaching and with play. So again, DeSean Elliott, another solid signing that we have. Those are the top three that I think, and they're going to change our team. I really believe that. The next player we're going to talk about is going to be Braxton Berrios. And sure, we're not trying to sign a person that's going to be, a number one receiver. That's not what we're going for. We have Tyreek Hill, we have Jalen Waddle, and so far what it looks like is no one's really grabbing Cedric. So it looks like we're going to have Cedric there as well. But what we have to take a look at is our special teams never really did anything, and to be honest, we were putting our stars back there most of the time just because we didn't have a return man that could really do anything on special teams. Now we do. Braxton Berrios is an all-pro return man, and honestly, he could really be a decent slot guy as well. He's not going to go crazy. He's not going to be one of those players that's going to be a superstar, but back there returning punts and kicks, we now have a guy that I think it's underrated what a special teams can do for your team, where when we had Jakeem Grant and there was a possibility that he can return kicks and punts, it changes your side of the field. Whereas when we were returning kicks and punts this year, it never really gave us any sort of a spark. Now you have Braxton Berrios, and he at one point was leading the league in yardage after punts and kicks with like 30, and he scored one of the longest touchdowns on a punt return for 102. So he has that spark that he can give you, that now on top of that with our great defense, which it's all momentum, and that's what we're trying to build here with Braxton, is that not only do you stop a team, but then if you get a punt or a kick return and you move up the field for significant yardage, that momentum starts really putting pressure, and then on top of that you have a top 10 passing offense, and that starts putting pressure, and it's just building that pressure to dominate teams. That is what we're trying to do with the special teams right now. Now you add Braxton Berrios, and now you have a special teamer that can really move the field for you as a returner. And then on top of that, we'll see what happens during the season, but he was also a pretty okay slot receiver, 2021 or something along those lines. I'm pretty sure he had like 5 touchdowns and 400 yards. So you're getting a decent slot guy that can come in and make an immediate impact. And then on top of that, you have Craycraft, you have Cedric, you have really good depth now at the wide receiver position. You have multiple playmakers on that side of the field. Great solid signing. And now you get a special teamer. Now you get somebody that can contribute on another aspect of the game where we can dominate on all cycles. We're going to go over them pretty quickly because I think they're just going to compete for, practice time or I don't believe that a lot of these guys are going to get starting spots. I don't think we'll see them very much, but they'll give you depth at the position. The one that I like the best is probably Eric Soper, and that's just because he's a tight end that can block. He's going to give you depth, and you have that blocking tight end that also can make plays. I think he had like 178 yards and a touchdown with Denver. He can make plays. So honestly, you're getting a guy that you have that extra run blocker. I think that's why everybody wants to make a big deal about Gesicki, but guy couldn't block, and we couldn't disguise anything, and it really brought out. We couldn't maximize our offensive potential, and I know people are going to hate me when I say this, when you have him on the field, because you know what's happening. You know it's a passing play. Whereas you got to figure in for play action, if Gesicki is in, you probably have a high IQ of thinking that it's going to be a passing play, because he's not a good run blocker. He's not a good blocker at all. So you're probably not putting Gesicki in to block. And when he didn't really block anybody. There are plenty of plays that you can look at where Gesicki didn't block the person he's supposed to block. So again, that is why the Patriots signed him to a 1-year deal, because you can't disguise, and that's a big thing in the NFL, is you can't disguise anything. People know what you're doing, and especially when you're running a West Coast run offense, you need to disguise stuff. That's what you're trying to do. It works on play action, running, and throwing the ball deep down the field. That's what the plays are designed to be. So if you have a person that you can't disguise something, that you're taking yourself out of your own zone by doing that. So I like Eric Soper. I think he's going to be a good blocking tight end to go along with Smythe. I think Smythe is going to have a pretty good, decent year this year. So he's going to go along with Smythe, and he's going to be able to run block for us. Freddie Swain, he's from the Seahawks. You know, a year or 2 years ago, he had like 343 yards and 5 touchdowns, so he's no slouch. But again, he's going to add that depth at receiver where you have a bunch of playmakers. We'll talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what they had. They had a bunch of playmakers that they could design and shift and move and, you know, make the offense so confusing. So you have another, now you're going to have that same type of team where you have Tyreek, you have Waddle, but you also have a bunch of depth behind them that you can just move around and everybody can make a play. And then lastly is going to be Dan Freeney. I think he's going to be depth at guard or center. He's basically like the Michael Dieter. You know, he's from the Jets. He's an okay guy. He'll just compete with depth. He's very manipulative, so he can like move around the offensive line. But I think this year we're re-signing a lot of people like Jerron Christian. I think we signed Shell, I believe, or Lamb, sorry. We signed a lot of our own offensive linemen back, and we're just trying to create depth behind that offensive line because we didn't really have that last year. We didn't have a whole bunch of offensive line, and now I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to build that depth so that, you know, there is no not really understanding where to put people, and you're going to work with the people that you have. We're going to talk about the re-signings, and I love all of them except for, I guess, one. We signed back basically every single running back that we had on the roster last year. So we have Gaskin, we have Ahmed, we have Jeff Wilson, we have Raheem Mostert, which I like this. I did not want to go crazy and get a, you know, quote-unquote big-name running back when you have a draft that has like 10 different running backs that are coming out that are all really, really good. So I'm happy about signing back Mostert. I think he showcased that, dude, he was very close to having a 1,000-yard rushing season if we utilized him better. And Jeff Wilson, he got injured, slowed down a little bit, but he showed some potential of being good. And I think, honestly, at this point, you just draft a running back, put him in that field, and you have a solid running back committee. You also signed back Jerron Christian, you signed back Kendall Lamb, and then we signed back Duke Riley, which were all depth players. And I just think, you know, it showcased that the Dolphins are going to bring back their own. They're not just going to completely retool a team. They're going to try and work to develop players to maximize their potential. You know, I think it's the same thing that they're doing with the offensive line, where now they're trying to look at George Fant, and I like it. They're not trying to sell the world for, you know, big name players, which it's good and it's bad. We don't know how it's going to turn out, but what it looks like is that we're really just trying to see if we can maximize Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg. They're not ready to call them busts yet, it looks like, and it looks like they're just trying to get people to compete with them and hopefully use the coaching staff to maximize Austin Jackson because he was a first-round pick, and you kind of hope that they turn out to be somewhat of a solid starter. You know, it's just very unfortunate that so far Austin, I mean, he showed some decency in the beginning of the season last season and then got injured and it all went downhill again. So I guess what they're trying to do is they're trying to see it's the last year on his contract, see if you can maximize and make him a solid right tackle like he was supposed to be, and you don't have to go and spend a whole bunch of money on anybody. So that is going to be the free agents that we have gotten so far. There's probably might be some news when I make this video, but I think it's been a really, really awesome free agency. It's been different, you know. I think we're so used to having like the big time signing one guy and then he comes in and he doesn't really make that much of a difference. We did get that big. I feel like people are forgetting we did do that. We got Jalen Ramsey, one of the best corners in the NFL for the past 8 years. And so you have that big name signing, and then you got a bunch of players that really can, if they get to their top ceiling, they could be all pros. David Long and DeSean Elliott, those guys can be really good players under this system if they maximize their potential. So I think we had a bunch of signs. We made depth with this team. There's receiver depth now. There's going to be offensive line depth, running back depth. There's going to be linebacker depth, corner depth now. Because Trillia Williams, we have Kader Kohu. We have a lot of players that are back on this team. Nick Needham. Now we have all those players back, and depth at safety. We have depth, potential, and star players and veterans all combined in one team, which is what you need to have a successful team. You don't need to overspend on one player because that's not going to make the team. The coaches and the team community is going to make a great team, and I think that's what we're doing with the free agency right now. And like I said, I love it. I think it's been fantastic. I think we've signed every kind of player that I would have wanted, and I think again, we're keeping cap space. I don't know what we're doing with Agba or Cedric or Jerome Baker. We'll see if they have that, but those are also players that can come in and make an immediate impact. So like I said, I've loved it. But it's been great. It's been great, and we'll see what they keep doing. But as always, hope you have a great rest of your day. Fins up. Peace.